Hey there, in this video we are going to look at what a solution is, and we will get a little bit more in depth on how you can check to see if something is a solution to an equation, and also how we can use this information to help us answer multiple choice questions potentially a little bit quicker. So a solution of an equation is a value of the variable that makes the equation true. So it's something that if I had an equation like x plus 1 equals 3, the solution is going to be the number or numbers, depending on the equation, that will go in for the variable x. And when I add 1 to that number, I get whatever's on the other side, which would be 3 in this case. So 2 is a solution to this equation because if we put 2 in place of x right there, then it becomes 2 plus 1, and 2 plus 1 over here is 3, and that is equal to what it is on the other side, which is 3. So now we are going to look at, is it a solution? And we will determine if the given value, so for example, -2 here and 3 over here, we will determine if those are solutions to the given equation. So for this first one, we have 4x plus 7 equals 15. We are going to plug in the -2 in place of the x. So we'll do 4 times -2 because this is 4 times x. And then everything else stays the same because that's the only x in the problem. So 4 times -2 is going to be the first thing that we evaluate. So we are looking at this left side here and simplifying it. And 4 times -2 is going to be -8, and then plus 7 equals 15. And we're trying to simplify this left side until it is a single number so we can see if it's equal to the right side. So now we do this -8 plus 7. And -8 plus 7 is going to give us -1. And -1 equals 15 is not a true statement. That is false. That is not an actual equality statement or an equation that is true. So -1 equals 15 is not true, which tells us that x equals -2 is not a solution. Now on example 2 here, we have a similar setup, but this time we have an x squared in the problem. So we have 8 minus x squared equals -1, and we are trying to see if 3 is a solution to this equation. So if I plug in 3 into that x, we have 8 minus 3 squared equals -1. And then we have 3 squared that we can evaluate. So we are looking at this left side. And if you follow your order of operations on that left side, then we go ahead and evaluate 3 squared. 3 squared is 9, so we have 8 minus 9 on the left side, and we are trying to see if it's equivalent to -1. So 8 minus 9 is -1, and -1 equals -1 is a true statement. That is a true equation, so this would tell us that x equals 3 is a solution. So the next thing we're going to look at is the number of solutions possible in a given equation. So the degree of the equation is what's going to tell us the maximum number of solutions. It won't tell us how many solutions there will be, but it will tell us the max number of possible solutions that an equation may have. So for example, if we have a first degree equation, then there is up to 1 solution. It could be less than that. It could be 1. A second degree equation could have up to 2 solutions, which means it could have 2, it could have less than 2. However, as noted here, there could be fewer solutions. So if it's a 7th degree, it could have 7 solutions or any number less than 7, including 0. So 0 solutions would be that there is no solution, which is possible as an answer as well. So looking at the degree, first degree, second degree, let's talk about how we know what degree an equation is. So we look at the highest exponent on a variable to tell us the degree of an equation. So if the highest exponent on the variable is a 1, that is the first degree. If the highest exponent on a variable, and it's important to note that it has to be on the variable, if that highest exponent on any of the variables is a 2, then it would be second degree, so on and so on. So if the highest exponent was a 12, if there was an x to the 12th as the highest exponent, or a 7x to the 12th, or a -17x, or something along those lines, x to the 12th as the highest exponent on any of the variables listed in that equation, then that is going to be a 12th degree, and that's how we determine the degree. All right, now looking at these examples, we see 3x plus 4 equals 6, x has really a first power on it, and there's only one x here, and that single x has a first power on it, so that's how we know it is a first degree. Now, with the second degree example I give you, we see that we have an x squared and an x, but the reason we know this is a second degree and not a first degree is because the highest exponent is a 2. This other x has a 1 there, so that would not be the highest. So x squared is going to tell us that this is a second degree polynomial or second degree equation. Again, if I had something like 7x to the 12th minus 4x cubed plus 17 or something like that, that would be a 12th degree. And the reason it is a 12th degree is because the highest exponent is that 12. Okay, now just to give you an example of fewer solutions, if I have something like this, the highest exponent on any of the variables is a 1, so this is a first degree. So what that tells me is that there are possible solutions up to the number 1, meaning it could be one solution or it could be less. It could be 0. In this case, once you learn how to solve or review how to solve equations, you would see that you'd end up with getting no solutions for this. So no number plus 1 can equal itself. You can think about it that way as well. But this one has no solution. So the possible number of solutions, just looking at the degree, would be the one solution. But the actual answer may be less than that. So keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and look at 2 examples and state the maximum number of solutions possible for each equation. So looking at this first one, we see x to the 5th, x to the 4th, x to the 7th, and that's all of our x's. The highest exponent on an x is 7. So that tells us that this is the 7th degree. And because this is the 7th degree, the max number of solutions is 7 solutions. Now, it could be less than that when you actually solve it, but the max number would be 7. On this one over here, we have 3x plus 1 equals 9. We just have an x. That is the only one we have. And when there's no exponent, remember that means it's a first power. So that would be 3x plus 1 equals 9 as a first degree. And because it's a first degree, there is up to 1 solution. So let's take a look at a multiple choice example and how we could use what we just talked about as a technique to avoid solving. So if you have a multiple choice question that's asking you to solve an equation, you could go through and solve this, and eventually you'll learn that you would add 7, you would cube root, and you would get your answer that way. However, especially if it's a more complicated equation that you are being asked to solve, you can actually use the multiple choice answers to do what we did at the beginning of this lesson, where we figured out, are these solutions to that equation by plugging those values in. So for example, x equals 2. If we plug 2 into this x spot right here in the equation, we would have 2 to the 3rd power minus 7 equals 1. And if I simplify that, 2 to the 3rd power gives me 8 minus 7 equals 1. 8 minus 7 is 1. And so I see right off the bat that would be my answer. Now, you, depending on the way that the question is worded, if it's select all that apply or things like that, it doesn't hurt if you have the time to check B, C, and D. And you can, especially if you're not confident with whether you plug that in correctly or not, you can always just double check it. So we have negative 2 to the 3rd power minus 7 equals 1. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Remember, if it's a negative and we're being multiplied by an odd number of times, so 3 times, that's going to be a negative times a negative becomes positive, and then multiply it by a negative, it will be a negative 8 instead of a positive 8, since it is a negative 2 being cubed. Then we have minus 7 equals 1. Negative 8 minus 7 is negative 15 equals 1, which is not true, so that one is not a solution. Then we can go ahead and try this x equals 3. So we do 3 to the 3rd power minus 7 equals 1. 3 to the 3rd power is 27 minus 7. 27 minus 7 is 20. And 20 equals 1 is not a true statement either. So we can cross that out. That is not a correct answer to that problem, or correct solution to that equation. So then we can double check x equals negative 3. And with that, we have negative 3 to the 3rd power minus 7 equals 1. -3 to the third power, again, just like -2 to the third power, because the base is negative and it's an odd exponent, it's going to be a negative number. So -27 minus 7 equals 1. And when you do -27 minus 7, you get -34 equals 1. And therefore, that is not a true statement either. And so that shows us that B, C, and D were not solutions, but x equals 2 was a solution. So if we knew that was a solution and you knew there was one correct answer, it wasn't, for example, select all that apply, then we know that that is our only correct answer. If you plugged it in and confident with your simplifying, you could stop there. Also note, especially if this equation was a little bit more detailed or more work involved with solving, this method could save you some time on your test. So let's do a quick summary of what we talked about in this video. So what is a solution? We talked about a solution is going to be something that makes the equation true when you plug it in for that variable or variables. Now, we talked about determining if a value is a solution to an equation. And again, we figured that out by plugging it in and seeing if we come up with a true statement. For example, if we ended up with something like 2 equals 2 at the end, then yes, that was a solution. Whereas when we ended up with something like -1 equals 15, then no, that would not be a solution. The maximum number of solutions possible, remember that was based on the degree. So the degree told us the maximum number. If it was a, let's say, 7th degree, then it would be 7 possible solutions. Okay, and remember we said it's up to, so this wouldn't just be there's 7 for sure. It's up to 7 possible solutions, and there could be fewer. There could be 0, which in that case it would be no solution. And then remember, we talked about the solving trick where you could avoid solving. If you have an equation and you have a list of multiple choice options, you could plug those back in to the equation and see which one works out using this method we talked about up here.